shown up here before we did.
Thank you,
We
Lord.
pray that you penetrate the hearts of every one of us. We pray that the worship that we sing will be pleasing to your ears. We pray that the fellowship will be blessed around the tables. Father, we're here for one reason only, to help point men to you. So, Father, I ask that you would bless this food to our bodies and bless these men that came. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen.
Welcome, men of God. Welcome to our July M6. I learned something tonight. The meat that we were eating is actually called pork wings. So not only did I not know that buffalo had wings, I also did not know pig had wings. Hope you guys all enjoyed your dinner. I'd like to thank the Palo Mesa Pizza crew, Dan, for our dinner this evening. After tonight's festivities, we'll have some root beer floats, thanks to Greg from Doc Bernstein's. And as always, we want to thank the Sheriff family for the use of this facility. Beautiful weather. Hope you guys all enjoyed your 4th of July. Great to see all you guys out here. We've got the Harvest Band here, and we have Jim on the 6th string, we have Jim on the bass, and we have Jim on the drums. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off with some worship, and then follow it up with a little story. I'm going to open it up as in prayer. Lord, I just pray for your presence here tonight. Lord, I thank you for all these men that showed up. Lord, I pray for protection over their families as they're here. I pray for heart surgery and brain surgery. I pray for you to show up in a powerful way, Lord. And we just turn tonight over to you. This is all yours. Just happy to be a part of it, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Could you guys all stand and join us?
3, 2, 1. After tonight, there's 2 more. We'll end up, the last one will be September. Okay? I don't know why I'm telling you that, but yeah, 2 more. And also the last, I guess this is why I'm going to tell you, the last one will be for couples. Last year I said that and there was a lot of groans. We did our first couples influencers M6 for couples. Singles can come too, that's fine. But we opened it up because all of our wives were saying, well, we want to go, we want to go, we want to go, we want to go. What do you do out there? So we did it, and it was kind of a trial. It was a one-time thing, and but you know what? It went well, I think. And so we're going to do it again, and we'll tell you more about that next month. You will have to sign up for that because we have to know this, the logistics and everything like that. But we'll talk more about that next month, and you'll probably get an email on it too. But you'll have to go online to sign up and pay. Sorry. Who's here for the first time? Wow. For those of you that are here for the first time and you just heard me something about costing something or paying, I thought this thing was free. It is. Since we have about a $30,000 a year budget, and God just takes care of it. But if we have a fundraiser, which we kind of don't, I guess the last M6 of the year is kind of a fundraiser. We charge $50 for a couple for a nice steak dinner. So, and the only reason we can make any money on that is because of Palo Mesa Pizza and Michael, because of the cost that he does. That's what he gives. So anyway, that's what it will be. So just a heads up for that. It will be limited. you know, because if you think of all you here and your wife's here too, it'd be a little tight. So it'll be open after the next M6 Monday night to sign up for you and your wife. And if you don't have a wife, that's fine. You can come by yourself. So it was great last year, I think, and so it was kind of a consensus of everyone to keep it a tradition and do the last M6 of the year of couples M6. So we're going to do it. So tonight we have a speaker, and you know, I'm really excited about tonight's speaker. For those of you that have been coming to these for a year or two or three, you know, you'll know that a man just kind of tells us the transformation of his life because of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. And all the stories are different, but they're, you know, they're all the same in a way of a transformed life, right? Those of you that heard last month for Dan Dow's, you know, I mean, we all have a story. You have a story, I have a story, we all have a story. And what is so awesome, well, kind of was last month's too, and you know, if those of you that are around the first year of the M6s, we had a lot of guys from Bakersfield coming over, sharing their testimonies of transformed lives, because we just got started here, so the journey, the M6s, the you know, everything that Influencers does hadn't had a chance to have any fruit on the coast, because you know, we just planted the seed. There's no fruit for a while, you know, when you plant a seed. But then we got more and more, mostly local stories, and sometimes we have an out of the area story, and you know, we just always have a good story, I think. But tonight is a special because you want to talk about a homegrown, homespun, home cooking man of the Central Coast, man of God. He's here. And all those M24s you hear about, and Sodo, you hear about Sodo, you hear about Soli, you hear about journey groups. A lot of you are in them, some of you are not. All of you ought to be, or at least your grandson needs to be in it, or your son-in-law. You've heard me say that before, and I'm just passionate about it, and I'm going to hammer you. Every time I get up there, I'm going to hammer you about it. If you don't like it, don't come. It's about transformed lives, and these journey groups, it's a discipleship process like none other. I don't know if it's the best one in the world, but it's the one that worked for me. Saved my life, saved my family. So that's the one I talk about. But I'm just going to introduce the man, and he's the man that has been giving you the introductions at M6 all year. Sean Baker. Where'd he go? There he is. We just kind of thought it's about time you heard Sean's testimony. And you're going to hear it now. God bless him. Thank you, Jim.
Well, I've been trying to think about how I'm going to start this whole thing off. Every time I sit down and try to write down my testimony for some sort of presentation, or at least what I think that God wants me to present, and I start to write down, and right as I start to write down, God reminds me of all the different things that He's brought me through. My relationship with my wife, watching my kids grow up, pulling me out of dead man zone is kind of what I call it, you know, sleeping, standing up. And I think the best way to start off this testimony is to tell you that the major transformation for me happened in 2016. And in 2016, I didn't realize it, but I was on the brink of losing my marriage. And I was on the brink of a whole different change for the three people that God's entrusted me to be the dad of. And so 2016 is really where everything switches for me. And I'll get to that towards the end. But so I was born and raised in the area. I was born and raised in Santa Maria. I was born in Valley Hospital down there before it was Marion. 34, married for going on 13 years. I got 3 kids, a 12-year-old daughter, Riley, 8-year-old son Rorden and my 6-year-old son Roderick. They're both sitting here at the table, so they're pretty excited tonight. They said, "Dad, you're going to be up there." So my story starts back in Orchid. So I was living out in Orchid by a little school out there called the Nightingale School, living on Majestic. And I was actually born on another street in Orchid, but that wasn't really where my childhood was. I was born into a house, a mixed house. I had two half brothers and one half sister from one of my dad's previous marriages. And then I had a half sister from one of my mom's previous marriages. They adopted two, and they had two, myself and my baby brother, so we're one of 8. But you can imagine, as I was born in and kind of trying to figure out where my place was in that household, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of resentment. So the house that I was born into, right? There was I'll just do this until the batteries will come back. Can you guys all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my half brothers and my half sister from my dad's previous marriage resented me because I was the product of a new relationship. I was taking their dad from them, and so I grew up with a lot of animosity towards me from that side of my brothers and sisters. There's one sister that I would say is my sister. I actually refer to her as sister, and everybody else is pretty much by name. So, and that sister really was very influential in raising me, especially up until about 6 years old. Like I said, I was living on Majestic, but our house was always in constant turmoil. My two adopted siblings came from a really hard time. Their parents, their dad ended up killing their mom, and there was a lot of drugs involved, and kind of a human trafficking type situation. So there was a lot of that came into the household with them being adopted into the family. No, it's all good. All right, back on. All right. So again, I was just trying to find my place. I didn't know what my place was. My mom had me later in life. You know, she was pushing about 34 when she had me, and like I said, there was a whole house full of kids there already in place, and so I kind of came in as almost an afterthought. Real early on, my mom had decided that I was going to be homeschooled, and I was going to be homeschooled all the way through. She had no intention of me going to a public school. So not only was I trying to find my place in my family, but I didn't really have anything to really go off of. I was kind of at the house, and then I did my homeschool, and then I had brothers and sisters that were in or out. About when I was 6 years old, as my baby brother was born, made my mom extremely sick. She was basically bedridden for the entire time that she was pregnant with him. So that's where I kind of started to pick up a little, that was my only identity, was really with what my mom was going on. My dad was a full-time firefighter, so he was gone for full 24-hour shifts, sometimes 4 days in a row. So really my history as far as up until about 7, 8 years old was really a lot with my sister, and then my mom that was bedridden during the time that she was pregnant with my brother. That allowed me a lot of free time at a really young age. And at that time, unlike now, it was throw them out the front door and hopefully they come back alive. You know, there's a lot of kind of in-between time. It was come back when you're hungry and hope everything goes well for you outside of the house. I developed 2 friends that I was really close with. This is about 5 or 6 when I was hanging out with them a lot. And I didn't really know, how to process a lot of the stuff that the world had to offer, I remember going over to my friend's house one day, and there was a distinct change in my friends and their cousin. We used to hang out with their cousin a lot too. And they started to get kind of this just kind of blank look on their face, and I really didn't know what was going on with that. We were hanging out in front of their house, I remember one time, and their dad called us all in. And my friend looked back at me and he goes, "Don't come in the house." And I didn't know what that meant. At first I thought I was missing out on something. Like, well, you guys get to go inside the house and I got to hang out here in the front yard all by myself. I didn't know what that meant, and they just kept on telling me. This happened 2 or 3 more times. Don't come in the house. And I couldn't tell what was going on. There was a lot of parts of the person about that. Like, well, these are my only 2 friends, and their cousin, and we hang out all the time. Why can't I go in the house? And we ended up finding out later that they were actually being molested, and pictures were being taken of them inside that house. And so my friends were trying to protect me from that. But being that we were really close, there was a lot of stuff that started to filter into our relationship. Some of that stuff was experimentation with that loss of innocence from their side. And that started to filter into our relationship, and the things that we started doing as 5 and 6-year-olds never should ever happen. 5 or 6-year-olds should never know or have any knowledge of any of those activities. And what we started doing behind bushes or in, wherever we could get away from the adults was a pact between us that we would never tell anybody about this. You're going to take this to your grave, and don't ever tell anybody about this, because once this whole thing came out and they kept on telling me, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything, because if you say something, you're going to end up in court with us. Because this was a long, drawn-out court process where the dad was taken to court, found guilty on 4 counts of molestation, my friends and their 2 cousins. And I carried that. And that was mine, and it was like, once we made that pact, don't talk about it, that's really where I kind of started to pick up myself, like, this is me now, this is my story, I'm not going to ever tell anybody about this, something to be ashamed of. I didn't want anybody to know anything about that, and I certainly didn't want to end up in court, because I saw what crap they were drugged through that whole process, made to go up there and relive these horrible memories of what their so-called dad was dragging them through. So at a real young age, there was a side of me that had been woken up, and I didn't really know what to do with that. I mean, how do you process that? I didn't go to school. I didn't have any siblings near my age. Then my mom's in full-time bedridden. Then this baby brother shows up who takes all the attention. At least that's what I'm viewing at that time, 6 or 7 years old. I don't know how to process this stuff. And I started to develop not only a fascination with stuff that I had no idea why I was fascinated with, but I started to develop my first level of real anger. I wanted to lash out, and I didn't know why. And I didn't know how to get that out. I didn't know how to tell anybody about that. And so what I ended up starting to do was going out and finding all the wrong people to hang out with, a lot older than me. We were doing everything from taking people's lawnmowers, taking stuff out of their garages. People's stuff was just disappearing, and then we would go back and we'd either sell it or, and I'm hanging out with kids that are probably 5 or 6 years older than me. And they came from hard pass. And I had this kind of, hey, I've got all day. I better go find out something to do. I had 8 to 10 hours where I could go do whatever I wanted. My mom's she's bedridden. A lot of the focus was on my older brothers and sisters. A lot of them were in and out of jail and or psych facilities coming from their hard pass. And so I was just kind of floating. Well, at about 8 years old, my sister, the one I called sister, she had a child and got married and moved to Virginia. And at that point, I really felt alone. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't know what to say. I was angry. I had this side of me, this loss of innocence that was just manifesting itself in all these different areas. And what I started to develop was my next skill, which was don't get caught. It's not wrong, or you can't get in trouble if you don't get caught. So I got really good at leading multiple personalities or multiple lives at any given moment. I was to you whoever I thought you wanted me to be at that moment. And I got really good at reading people. I got good at the, hey, I'll be this guy. I'll be the Christian guy that shows up at church. And then I'll be this guy that hangs out with his friends and steals stuff out of garages. And then I'll be this guy, and so on and so forth. And so I started to develop these skills in all the wrong direction. I started getting in trouble with the police, and as crazy as it sounds, got in trouble with the police. My parents never found out. A couple times I was sitting in the back of a cop car and I had a couple different police officers tell me, if you continue down this road, I guarantee we're going to be talking to you in the near future, and eventually we're going to be talking to your parents. It never made it that far. My parents never found out this other little life that I was leading. Granted, right now I'm only about 8 or 9 years old in that story. I started seeking out, getting a hold of material, adult material, because I had this fascination that I wanted to feed and live this whole other area, and it started to almost become self-medicating in that area, where it was like, okay, well, I'll go to this anytime I feel slighted, anytime I feel like maybe my parents aren't paying attention to me, or I want to go do something that makes me feel good. And so I started to develop that area of my life at a very young age. Right about that time, my friends also, because of the charges that were brought against their dad, had changed their names and they moved to Missouri. No longer got to talk to them. So now I'm getting really good at jumping around churches as well. That's another thing we like to do. If a church got uncomfortable, we just move to the next church. Well, we don't like the way the pastor said this, well, we'll just move to the next church. We don't like the way the Sunday school is, well, we'll just move to the next church. And so as this is going on, I'm developing these skills of jumping from church to church, from pastor to pastor, and no one ever really knew who I was. And again, I'm holding this hurt, this dark side where it's like, I believe in God, I believe God's there, but yet I'm still questioning, why would you let this happen? If you're really there, why didn't you stop their dad? If you're really there, why didn't you stop the activities between us? That became a hurtful process for me. And confusing, I think, would be the best word, just confusing. So this continued on through junior high. I'm still homeschooled. I had no real public interaction other than we had this paper route. Rewind just a little bit. We were also doing a paper route 7 days a week at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And so at about 5, 6 years old, I was also working a full-time job with my mom and my dad, who would change out the car. So my dad would hop in when he could. He'd drive me around at 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd fold all these papers. We had 200 plus paper route, and we'd go around and deliver all these papers. And that became this cycle. Wake up early, go fold papers, deliver all the papers, come home, go to sleep for a little bit, do homeschool, and then go do whatever I wanted for the rest of the day. I finally started to get into a place where I had some consistency. I was going to New Life Church, started to get connected with a little bit of the youth group going on there. I remember Mark Valdez and Mike Ferris back there too, also from the youth group. And I started to pick up that there's more to life than this playing whoever I needed to be at whatever time I needed to be that. But I still wasn't taking care of this whole other issue that I was swallowing and taking through each situation that I was going into. That started to filter out again, because no matter how much I tried to encase this or encapsulate it and stuff it away for nobody else to see, but the anger side that I was developing, the different personalities or lifestyles that I was developing, I couldn't keep them all contained. I tried really hard to keep these really contained because I didn't want my parents to know about it. They had enough stuff to deal with my brothers and sisters, and then my smaller brother. They didn't need to worry about me. I just needed to go do my own thing. So at about junior high, I had, I would say probably 2 or 3 different lifestyles going on. I had the youth group Sean that goes to church, and I'm that guy that likes to hang out at church, and I can memorize scriptures, and personable. I like to go talk to people. I've always really enjoyed talking to people. I've got pictures of me at 2 years old going up and winning the baby contest because I'm sitting on the judge's lap there hanging out. There was a personable side of me that made it very easy for people to look at just that superficial part, and then I could keep them at a distance, and they didn't really need to know any more about me. So junior high's around, I just started getting into competitive swimming, and this is right about the time when we were able to drop off on the paper route. I started picking up on competitive swimming, and simultaneously I'm picking up competitive swimming, but I'm also being my parents' counselor for their marriage. I started hearing things about my dad from my mom that I never should have heard about. I was with her all the time. We were doing these paper routes. I was with her at homeschooling, and all this stuff it was just all blended together. There was really no differentiating between which section I was in at what point. It was homeschool. It was here's your dad does this. He was a recovering alcoholic. He carried a lot of those activities. Not the alcohol, but the activities of being an alcoholic into the household, gambling, money issues, and so I got to hear about that. I got to be my parents' counselor right around 10 or 11, starting to hear about a bunch of this stuff. Competitive swimming came along. I was able to drop the paper out, and I did competitive swimming like there is no tomorrow. I swam anywhere from 8,000 to 9,000 yards a day. I swam 6 to 7 days a week. I would go to meets, and this became my new focus. I didn't have to think about anything else, because when you're getting the crap kicked out of you in a pool and the coach is yelling at you and you're going too slow and you need to make it faster, that's all you think about. I just need to make the next lap. Okay, now I just need to make the next meet. Okay, now I just need to drop a few seconds off of this whatever I was in. And that culminated in when I was about 14. I finished off with Fresno Junior Olympics in the gold in the mile and the 1,000. And chopped off 2.5 minutes off of my mile time and took out the first place guy in California. That was quite the yeah. And then I had my coach right at the end of that meet. He came over, he drove all the way up to Fresno to tell me, you never should have been in this meet. I didn't say you could be in this meet. And everything you did here was really null and void. It doesn't do you any good for your career as far as a swimmer goes. And so I shut off. That was the end of it for me. I didn't have that affirmation from my coach. My dad's off trying to keep his work going. My mom is trying to figure out how to pay the bills. Trying to keep my older brothers and sisters out of jail or somewhere. I mean, they've been kicked out of I don't know how many different cities they weren't allowed in after that point. And now the anger is really kind of filtering into about every part of my life that you can imagine. Since I dropped off the paper route, I stopped saving money. So I thought, well, I'm homeschooled, so I'm gonna need a new source of money. So I started making my own money, and I was doing odd jobs, working for senior citizens out in trailer parks, just doing random things, sweeping, whatever I needed to do to make whatever money that they had available for me. And through that process, I was put together with this older guy. He had a stroke, half of his body wasn't working, and he had a very rebellious nature about him. And his daughter always used to tell him, hey, you've already had a stroke. So I'm hanging out with, his name was George. And his wife had, when I first met him, she was still around. She ended up dying suddenly shortly after we started hanging out, and I was helping him out. And so it was him and I against the world, against his daughter, against his son-in-law, against just about everybody. So whatever we wanted to do, win. You know, it was what could we get away with? Now, keep in mind, I'm still carrying around all of the anger, still carrying around this dark spot I don't want anybody to know about, self-medicating with those activities. Again, behind closed doors, and I didn't want anybody to ever find anything. And, you know, right about that time, I got introduced to alcohol. And so I'm sitting right there at 14, right? I'm just finishing up my career as a swimmer, and now I find out what Hennessy is, right? So his daughter locked up all the alcohol and put it out in the garage. And he was stuck to a wheelchair. He couldn't get up, couldn't stand. Literally half of his body didn't work. So she put it just out of his reach. Well, he thought it'd be funny to, give the 14-year-old that comes over and works at his house, a bottle of alcohol every once in a while. Simultaneously, I'm still maintaining the Christian Sean. I'm every year, every opportunity I have, I'm going to church camps. I'm going down to Mexico to go on missions trips, and I'm getting the attaboys over here on the mission side, and I'm getting the attaboys over here on the other side, and life's good, right? I've got my own source of affirmation that, hey, you're doing a great job. George is over here, yeah, you're doing a great job. Here's money, here's alcohol, and on the other side, I've got the church saying, wow, this is amazing. You're going to all these mission trips. You're helping out with the church. Everything must be going great. And I'm still swallowing this, still living this other life behind the scenes. High school comes around, and this process now starts to filter out to everybody I know. And I'm starting to hurt people around me. I started experimenting with random things. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I was experimenting with these things. And the easiest way for me to describe it was I would say to people, hey, I'm not doing this to you. I'm just showing you the door. You have to walk through it. But what I was really saying was I'm hurting, and I'm trying to take care of that hurt, and I want you to come along with me. So I started hurting people around me. Some to this day I still have yet to talk to. I pray for God to make those opportunities available. But that part started to blend now. Now I couldn't keep it from the church because these hurting people are going to the church and they're saying, you guys see this side of Sean, but there's this other side of Sean that I don't think you know about. And that's the side of Sean that can't be involved with the church. And so I started getting these reports back from the pastoral staff. Well, I know you want to be a youth leader, you want to help out with the youth, but we really can't have you hanging out. And rightfully so. I was a wreck. This whole time my parents are going, oh, well, he hasn't ended up in jail, so he must be doing pretty good. He's keeping his grades up. I was homeschooled, so it was pretty easy to keep my grades up. I sat on the couch every morning and took care of my school. So hurting people, start figuring out what girls are like. I'm right now around 15, 16. Start dating. Rewind just a little bit. Back when I was 14, I actually had the opportunity to meet my now wife. She was coming into the junior high youth group, which thank God he separated us and kept us distant from each other because God knows where we would be if we were able to get into a relationship at that time. So she ends up getting pretty mad because I told her I liked her. And I said, let's go out on a date. She just kept on saying, oh, I'm busy. And that kind of frustrated me. I didn't really have too many problems in this area. I felt pretty confident that I could go out and, talk to these girls and figure, tell them what they wanted to hear. Again, be that person that they wanted me to be at that moment. And Danielle, my wife, was the first one to really tell me, no, I'm busy. I'll call her and I'd say, can we go out to a movie? Can we do something? Oh, no, I'm busy. And then she ended up telling me, you're just too good of a guy. You're marriage material. I can't date you. Thinking back on it, I'm like, thank you, Lord, for keeping us separated at that time because that would have been a huge disaster. Started getting into fights with my parents. At this point, they were starting to notice that these areas were blending. There was anger coming out. They didn't really know why I was lashing out at them. My mom started going through my room, found some magazines in there. I remember the day that she came to me and these magazines laid out on the table and she was crying. She's just sitting there crying and she goes, these people are hurting in there. And I think that was the first moment where I recognized the correlation between this dark perversion of what God had intended as a beautiful thing between a husband and a wife and the hurt side. And up until that point, it was really easy for me to encapsulate and say, oh no, this is this side of my life. That's my side of my life. As long as I do these good works and I do in the mission trips and I keep all the pastoral staff all happy and everything's going smooth, then these areas don't have to mix. They're not the same. They're not together. And little did I know, God was really going to take me on an awakening journey. I resisted quite heavily to this process. I didn't like the idea that now all of a sudden my crap was out for everybody to see. I could no longer keep the pastoral staff happy because they now knew more about me than I wanted them to know about me because I was hurting these people next to me. My parents were frustrated with my activities. They didn't really know what was going on. They knew that I was angry. Again, I hadn't told them anything. In fact, to this day, my parents don't know this part of my story. My parents asked if I could give my testimony to them, and I said it'll be recorded, and you guys will be able to watch it. But they're going to be finding out a lot of this stuff as I'm telling you. So I'm in high school, right? Now about 17 and a half. I got into my first fight with my dad. I'll never forget this day because it was that part of me that died a little bit that day. We were standing in the kitchen, we were yelling at each other. My mom's like, "Get out of the house, you guys can't do this in here." We were yelling at each other, and I flipped them the bird and told them what for, and we ended up in the front yard. And up until that point, my dad had been that strong guy, that guy that was unapproachable, that guy that was a firefighter, the guy that was working out. There's no way you could beat this guy. And we tussled, we wrestled around in the front yard. I remember my mom screaming at the top of her lungs. We got into a pretty good little fight. I don't think there was any blood. I don't remember much blood, but I remember I pinned my dad. And I remember just this shock wave of my whole world, like what is going on right now? Everything's getting wrecked. My church family's wrecked. My high school's wrecked. The people that I'm hanging out with in my youth group, which was my only form of like interaction with the public, was youth group, is wrecked. My swimming's wrecked. What do I have to hold on to? And at about 17 and a half, my parents said, you got to figure something out. You can't keep doing this. You're living this life. We want to drug test you, and we want to find out what's going on. And I said, oh, whatever, I'm out. So I bounced. It was 17 and a half. Moved up to 5 cities, and I was now on a hell-bent tour of finding out everything that I couldn't get my hands on before. I was now essentially a young adult responsible for my own self. I was hanging out with a friend whose mom at the time was dealing with her own issues, and it was just him and me against the world. We had about 3 years of just stuff. Anything that you can imagine, worldly stuff. I went as far opposite of God as I could, because I figured if as long as I run the other way, he won't find me, he won't catch me. And that's what I did. Started living this very self-destructive, just downward spiral, hurting more people all over the place, going to bars, getting fake IDs. And that really continued, and it was almost a blur for those 2 years because it was moment to moment. You know, at that point I was paying rent at a house. I was making about $2,000 a month working, and my rent was $200 a month. So I had $1,800 to do whatever I wanted to that day. And that's what we did. We lived day to day. I remember at one point I woke up, I thought I was dying. I had gone through a pretty deep bender. I was multiple days in a row, and I remember waking up and seeing a big rat run across the other side of the room because we had piles of trash in that side of the house. Bathroom was a mess, walls were falling apart, and it was me and my buddy, and this was fun. This is what we were doing as fun. We were really having a great time, or so I thought. That night, I drove myself to San Luis with this truck that I had somehow commandeered through a whole bunch of finagling and telling someone I was going to pay them, and took the truck, never ended up paying the guys, driving this truck around, no registration, no license, no insurance, and I'm just doing whatever I want to. I go to San Luis Obispo. I knew that where I worked, I could go ahead and could get alcohol because all the guys knew me. Went out there, I drank a whole bunch of very strong drinks, and then decided I was going to drive myself back home and continue on to some other activities which, when you mix with alcohol, are very detrimental to your health. I spent the next week and a half thinking I was on my deathbed. And in between these waves of I didn't care if I lived tomorrow or what was going to happen the day after that or what happened before, I was living this just wave of hurt. I was a little anger. I'm like, God, I don't even care if I live tomorrow. You know, and I'm sitting there on that bed, and God helped me there, and we processed through a whole bunch of stuff for a week and a half. I almost lost my job. I don't know why my boss didn't fire me. He should have. But he gave me my job when I came back, and I decided that on that deathbed, I'm not going to do that again, because that was way too close to losing all this stuff that I've built up. The job, the money, the lifestyle, random girlfriends, just this destructive lifestyle, and just ruining people along the way. Just bringing them to the so-called door, showing them the door and telling them, you walk through, you make this decision for yourself, I'm not going to do it for you. Right about that time, God provided a path back to my now wife, and that was Danielle. Danielle and I started hanging out on the summers that she was on the back from school. She went down to Westmont, Santa Barbara. Thank God again for keeping us separate as long as she did. We were hanging out on these summers, you know, coming back, and I remember we were hanging out and playing house, and then she would go back down to school, and then I wouldn't see her for a few months, and we weren't sure if we were in a relationship or what was going on. I knew I liked her, and she knew she kind of liked me, but we didn't know what was going on. In her mind, we were in this dead set relationship. In my mind, I was thinking, this is great. You're here for the summers, and then you're gone for the winters, and I can do whatever I want the rest of the year. During that process, I got a phone call. It was really funny. I got a phone call at work, and my wife said to me, it was my girlfriend at the time, she goes, we really need to talk. It was the voicemail I got. And I was like, oh, that's not good. And so I'm sweating bullets and thinking, oh crap, this is the phone call that more than what we wanted to happen. And she goes, well, I end up calling her back. I'm freaking out after I work all day. I end up calling her back. And she goes, well, I just want to know, are we really in a relationship right now? I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's what you left a voicemail on my phone telling me we really needed to talk? I was like, don't ever tell me that we need to talk again unless you're pregnant. I got a call a week later, and another voicemail that said we need to talk. So I'm 20 years old. Haven't gotten rid of any of the stuff that I've been carrying through. I know that I like Danielle. I've known that I've liked her since the day I saw her. I actually prayed for her hand in marriage when I was 14. I remember the day that I asked for her, man. I said, Lord, I want to marry that girl when I was 14 years old. And we didn't know what to do. We were two broken people. She had a bunch of stuff going on with her family. Her dad died when she was really young. And her stepdad, who I'm now quite involved with, John Lohr, has been a light and definitely brought me back to the life that God had intended for me in my adulthood. So when we first look at it, we're going, okay, there was the abortion word that it came up, and that part broke me. I knew that no matter how much I hurt or how much anybody else was hurting, I knew that wasn't right and that wasn't going to work for me. And I told her that. I said, I don't care what we do, but we can't do that. So then the adoption word came up. And I remember I sat my parents down and I said, we need to talk to you guys. Now keep in mind, I haven't talked to them for years. I need to talk to you guys. And we sat down with them, and I said, just so you know, my girlfriend and I are pregnant. And my mom goes, I thought you you had cancer or AIDS or something. She goes, thank God you're just pregnant. So then they said, well, we'll help you out. We'll cover you guys. You know, we'll give you an apartment. We'll, give you money, and well, you guys can figure this out. And we ended up having, I remember for the first ultrasound, seeing my daughter on there, and I was inebriated when we went into the ultrasound. I'm sitting there crying. I look a mess. My eyes are all bloodshot, and the doctor's looking at me like, oh God, these guys are going to have kids together. So we get married on my birthday from 21 to 22 after she decides to leave and go up to the Bay Area and make me chase her every weekend. So I work during the week and I go up to the Bay Area to go visit her, try to keep our relationship together. I remember the day my daughter was born on March 14th, 07, up in Oakland, California. We drove up there, and that was the change of you're responsible only for yourself to now you're responsible for your wife and your now child. So I took the only skill set that I knew, which was separating these things and being who I needed to be at that time, because I didn't really know anything else. I had a good foundation in what I thought was Christianity, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll keep this here, I'll be a Christian here, we'll go to church, I'll get married, that'll be good there, and then we have our kid, and then I'll be a dad here, and then I'll do my own stuff. I'll continue all of this other stuff simultaneously. So I lived a single lifestyle, married with a child, and that's now the next, 7 years. Now we're 7 years of this, of my wife saying, which I found out later, not at the time, but later she said to me, she goes, I was just waiting for you to cheat on me so that I could leave. And I had no idea that for 8 years, the first 8 years of our marriage, she was just waiting for that one trigger. And she kept on praying for me and praying for me and praying for me, knowing that I was living this single lifestyle. And she just hung out and let me do this. And right around early 2016, John Lohr, actually the whole time we were married, John Lohr was trying to get me in there. Hey, come to Promise Keepers, come to this meeting, go to that meeting. And I'm like, okay, whatever, I keep blowing him off. Well, 2016 rolls around, and he goes, what's it going to take for me to get you somewhere? And so I got to know in advance. You can't just drop the stuff on me on the week. And he goes, okay, well, what are you doing in October? Now, that was about 4 or 5 months advance notice. And I said, I guess nothing. Why? And he goes, well, you're going to go to, what about going to M24 with me? And I said to my wife, and I said, John's not going to leave me alone. He just keeps on coming after me and telling me, why don't you come to M24? Why don't you come to the M6? Why don't you get involved with these guys? And she goes, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I think I'm going to go with him just to shut him up, because he won't leave me alone. 2016 was the change in everything. I got up there, going up there to Bakersfield. We're up at a place called Woody, California. Behind Bakersfield, in the middle of nowhere, cow patties, dirt all over the place. Nothing is beautiful out there except for the love of Christ and all the men that are around. About 800 or 900 guys show up there. And I think I'm doing this for him. I get up there and God meets me in a powerful way and starts to show me, I've been there, and he shows me these shots, these still moments. I was there. Remember when you were laying on the bed and you thought you were dying? I was there. I was here. I kept you from getting hurt here. And just these still shots. And I remember getting wrecked. I went up to John afterwards and had to apologize to him. I said, John, I'm sorry. I came up here because I thought that I was doing this for you. Really what I needed to know was that God was there the whole time. I came back and my wife was like, first she looked at me like, who the heck is this? And just walked out into the house. And I had to spend the next 8 to 9 months showing her that God had met me in a powerful way. She had been praying for this the whole time, but she didn't know what she was looking at when I first walked into the house. So then I went to that. Then I was trying to get involved with journey groups. Ended up at Solely Business, which was the first time that I've shared this testimony. And God told me when I first got to Solely Business, He goes, you're going to tell these guys in your group at this table things that you've never told anybody before. And I knew exactly what He was talking about. I needed to tell them the story when I was a little boy because I was still carrying all that pain, that hurt. And that's what I did. I have a really good friend from that table. His name is Brad Newberg from Bakersfield. Some of you guys may know him. He was at my table and walked me through giving my testimony through that process. I have not experienced anything more real. I've not experienced any adrenaline rush more great than when God gets a hold of you and grabs you by the shoulder and says, I've been there. When you thought you were by yourself, when you thought you were running in the opposite direction, I was there. I was holding you. I was making sure you weren't going to get hurt. 2017, got to go through my first journey group with Mark Merck. He's my journey guide. Led me through that. And I was there with my now co-guide, Andy Jennings. We got to go through 2016 through what I call the accelerated version. We were doing about 3 weeks, maybe a month of work, definitely towards the end in about a week to 2 weeks. So it was just this accelerated version. But the whole time God was just showing up in a powerful way. And He kept on telling me through different people saying, and I was going, I'm this young guy, I don't know, how am I supposed to tell guys that are twice my age what to do, how to live life? And the words that kept on being given to me were, God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. And that's when I realized this is what God's doing, not what I'm doing. God, He doesn't need me to be this person or that person or this situation or that situation. He needs to be involved in all of them. And at the end of my first journey group, I went around and did a quick interview. I'll wrap it up. I know we're running out of time. Did a quick interview with my family, asked my wife, hey, can you write this letter and say, in the letter, what you think has changed in me over this past year in this journey process. And I'll never forget when I got to my daughter, and I asked her, I said, her name's Riley, I said, Riley, have you noticed any differences in me since I've gone through this journey process? And she just nonchalantly throws out, she goes, Dad, you've always talked about Jesus in our house, but now He's living in our house. And that was everything. God met me right there through my daughter, through her words, through her eyes, just looked up and she just said, Dad, Jesus is living in the house now. And that's all I needed to say. We're now looking at 20 plus guys going through journey groups. We've got them on Tuesday night. There's, as far as the groups that I'm involved with, I have an international group going on Saturday mornings on the computer. 3 countries, 7 states, United States. And every single one of the ways, God keeps meeting me there. And I'm going to share with you my life verse. Every time I start questioning, really, is this what you want me to do, God? This is the verse He keeps on giving me. He says, the things that you've learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace shall be with you. And that's His reassurance to me every single time. That's Philippians 4:9. I'll be there. Just keep doing what I told you to do. Keep doing what you learn and listen for my words. I will be there with you. And He has been. And I see it through the guys. I see it through in the interactions. I see it through my sons. I see it through my relationship with my wife. And I can honestly say that I've never lived a more exciting life than the one that God brings me through every single day. So with that, that's my testimony. So I'm not sure if that meant anything to any of you guys out there, but if you need prayer, we'd like to open it up. The journey guides, if you guys would mind coming up to the front. We'd like, if you need to ask Jesus Christ into your life, if you just need prayer because you had some heart surgery or brain surgery going on tonight, I would like to pray with you. And we're going to break down now. We got the tables and the chairs. And all the chairs go up against here. The tables go into the back room. You guys... yeah, of course, after the chairs and the tables, the root beer floats are all set up right back there. So thank you guys for your night. We'll see you guys next month.